Ewan McGregor is reportedly close to signing on to film a Star Wars TV series on Disney Plus instead of a full-featured movie, arguing that due to, quote, Star Wars exhaustion, full-length films might not be the way to go, and this might be the future for other franchises. In this video, we break down the myth that Star Wars fatigue caused the failure of Solo, a Star Wars story. We also look at whether Alita, which made more money than Solo at the box office, may end up on Disney Plus, as some of the media have discussed, if this pattern is in fact true. Sources who have worked on the movie say this is not necessarily a bad thing, but we'll give you the full details, as well as updating our model for the Blu-ray numbers for Alita, as we've got a new week of data. The doctor is in. What's up guys, Doc Ito here with another free repair. Remember to like and subscribe to the channel and hit the bell so you don't miss any of our updates. As many of you know, I'm a big Star Wars fan, so it was a little bittersweet for me to hear that an Obi Wan TV series is potentially going to come. I thought Ewan McGregor did a fantastic job as Obi Wan Kenobi in the Star Wars prequels, and overall I thought the prequels as a 3-movie arc were extremely well done, telling a tragic story of Anakin's fall from grace and his relationship with Obi Wan Kenobi. But Ewan McGregor, at 48 years of age, is the perfect age to reprise his role as Obi Wan Kenobi, giving us a look at him after the prequels and before the original trilogy came out. So while he would have been the logical choice for one of the Star Wars story movies, of course Disney decided to give us Solo instead, a movie that pretty much no one was asking for. But after tough times on the Star Wars side of things, and Galaxy's Edge not doing that well at Disneyland, it seems they finally realized that the fans want the original trilogy, with Ewan McGregor in talks to reprise his role, but instead of in a feature-length movie, on Disney Plus streaming, which may be showing how Disney wants to use its streaming service in the future. This article from The Verge talks about how there were initial plans to make a feature-length Star Wars spin-off, and these plans were scrapped following, quote, lackluster success of 2 Star Wars spin-off films, Rogue One and Solo. A third movie was planned, but Disney decided to cancel the plans and delay the trilogy from Rian Johnson and the Game of Thrones creators, with Bob Iger saying, "I made a mistake, it was too much, too fast, too furious." Even a theatrical disappointment by the standards of Disney, which is becoming used to billion-dollar box office hits, could be a perfect fit for streaming. But if you look at the numbers, Rogue One did make $1 billion, so it makes no sense to put it in this same category as Solo, a Star Wars story, which was a real bomb, because Rogue One made decent money on a 220 net budget, and this budget would have been smaller if they didn't have to do all those reshoots. The real problem was Solo, a Star Wars story, making $400 million on a $300 million budget. This movie lost hundreds of millions, but the cause is not Star Wars exhaustion, basically. Because if you look at the level of interest for Star Wars over the last 5 years, you see we were looking at about a 4 or 5 level before The Force Awakens came out, and then it jumped up high, went back down, and then around the time Rogue One came out, it jumped up again, and The Last Jedi came out, it jumped up again. Now, the real problem is here, The Last Jedi. The real reason people didn't see Solo was The Last Jedi. Because in the same time period, Marvel has been cranking out films every few months, and they've pretty much all been financial successes. People were not sick of these movies, and people would not be sick of Star Wars movies if they were quality movies. If we take this interest comparison back to 2004, you can see that interest in Star Wars is about the same or higher now than it was at the time that Revenge of the Sith came out, with The Force Awakens having a massive jump. But if we compare the last 5 years to search terms like Avengers, you can see that the interest for Star Wars is generally much higher than Avengers. And this is during the same time that Marvel is putting out movies all the time. Star Wars interest by search terms on Google is much higher, so fatigue is not there. There's actually more interest in Star Wars than a term like Avengers. If we use a different term like Marvel, you see that Star Wars is still above. You get a little bit of jump here when Captain Marvel came out, but overall the baseline trend is still higher for Star Wars, even though Solo bombed. Comparing it to some of the other characters like Captain America, there's no comparison with Star Wars much higher. Iron Man is barely a blip. Captain Marvel had a little bit of a bump around the time it came out, but it's still nothing overall compared to Star Wars. Even Infinity War, which is a huge movie, while it did have a big jump, quickly fell away. And Endgame, now the biggest movie of all time, is still on its way down, and it's probably going to fall below Star Wars pretty darn quick in a few weeks once the Blu-ray release settles out. So fatigue is not the cause for the Star Wars failures. So while yes, having 4 Star Wars movies in 4 years is more than usual, that's not the real cause of why fans didn't see it, and they know it. And here's how you know they know it. If you go all the way down to the comments, there are no comments, because they know the vast majority of comments, whenever they post a movie update on Star Wars, are people talking about The Last Jedi and the issues with that movie. So what they decide to do is just censor it completely. There are no comments available. So overall, I am excited to see Obi-Wan and Ewan McGregor back in action. Hopefully this does get confirmed. I'd rather see this than nothing. And finally, the article says that overall, an Obi-Wan show could translate to a full movie in the future. So of course, for the Alita fans out there, we're wondering, could the same thing happen, with articles pushing this Alita continuation on Disney Plus already? Now, of course, we want to see a full trilogy like James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez had planned to begin with. Now, it is possible we could get a Disney Plus series for Alita that isn't that bad. I mean, we do have decades of story already written with the manga by Yukito Kishiro, allowing us a full look at the amazing world of Alita and beyond if they were to go down the serialization TV series route. So it's possible, if they have good production values, that a Disney Plus streaming series would not be bad. I think we would all love to see the trilogy that was initially planned by Cameron. But if we have to go down that route, I would personally probably rather have that than no sequel at all. However, we still have to fight for the sequel. We have to buy those Blu-rays. We have to continue to support the movie to try to get the actual sequel in theaters. Because if we show that there's enough support for it, they're going to go down that route instead of a series. Now, in the past, we reported on a video by SC Reviews where he had a source sent to him from someone who was in the movie saying that a Disney Plus series would still not be bad because Cameron and Rodriguez would be involved and their attention to detail would make an amazing series. I actually saw those texts before SC Reviews even published them, but I didn't want to publicize them since this was a individual who didn't necessarily want these comments being made public. I do agree with the thought that with Cameron and Rodriguez involved, they would make a high-quality series, but I still think we are going to have to fight for the sequel movie because we do not stand by in the presence of evil. And the way to do that is to buy those Blu-rays.
Hi, Alita Army. What's up, guys? Buy those Blu-rays, baby!
So let's take a look at the Blu-ray numbers, and of course, remember to order the movie at the links below if you haven't, as well as check out the Alita Sequel petition, which is around 62,000 votes at the moment. As expected, with Pokemon Detective Pikachu coming out, Alita has fallen down to number 3 on the list, actually passed by Batman Hush as well, but it's still in front of Shazam and Captain Marvel. This is from Media Play News, where we don't have a actual number of sales listed, just a market share index. And we've been using these numbers to try to estimate Alita's numbers based on forward projections of the actual Blu-ray sales from the numbers, which is several weeks behind. We are now at July 21st, so probably next week around this time, we should have some actual data showing us Alita's haul. But let's take a look at my model and get updated estimates. Since the numbers has updated their numbers to July 21st, giving us a more accurate picture of where the other movies we're comparing to Alita will be on the first week of Alita's release. With Captain Marvel about 50,000 units the week before, it's possible it was only selling about 40,000 the following week, divided by 0.0812, giving us about 500,000 units for Alita in the first week. This is a little lower than before, but still not bad. And of course, if Captain Marvel's higher, it could be higher than that. How to Train Your Dragon 3 got a nice bump, so it could be anywhere about 20, 30, 40,000 units. If we take 25,000, that would also put us around 400,000 units sold for the first week for Alita. Dumbo at 45,000 units might be around 30 the following week. 30,000 units divided by 0.06543, putting us around 450,000 units for Alita's first week. And finally, Aquaman actually went up to 35,000 units. If it goes back down around 25,000, that would give us around 600,000 units for Alita. So probably somewhere in the 500,000 range is what we're looking at for week 1, which is around where we were before, maybe a little bit on the lower side. Taking these numbers over to week 2, Captain Marvel might be around 30,000 units, putting us around 140 sold in week 2 for Alita. Dumbo might be around 25,000 units, putting us at 194,000 for week 2. If How to Train Your Dragon goes back down to 10,000 units, That would be again around 140,000 units for Alita. And finally, Aquaman. If it's around 20,000, we're again looking at around 200,000 for Alita. So I think the week 2 estimate between 150 and 250 from before is still accurate. We're probably looking at maybe 175,000. So let's look at the new data from week 3. Here Alita had a 20% index compared to Pokemon Detective Pikachu, but it still sold about twice as much as Shazam and Captain Marvel. If we think Captain Marvel is around its 9th week, it should be selling about 20 to 30,000 units. So we take 25,000 divided by 0.1148 times 0.2131, giving us about 50,000 units for Alita. Dumbo might be around 15,000 units at this time. If we do the same math, it actually gives us about 85,000 for Alita. Let's run the numbers for Aquaman. If it's selling 15,000 units, divided by 0.03 times 0.2131, about 100,000 units. And How to Train Your Dragon 3, if it's around 10,000 units, divided by 0.02577, again, times 0.2131, putting us around 80,000 units. So you see the ranges are somewhere between 50 to 100,000 units, a little bit on the lower edge of what I predicted, looking at maybe 75,000 for this week, which would give us a sum of about 750,000 units for the 3-week total, which is what the numbers actually reports. Of course, the estimates could be higher or lower. I was hoping we'd be around 1 million units in its first week on the Blu-ray side alone. We may still reach that number, but it does show that the estimate from the week before is still within range of what we're talking about now, which would still be a great opening, although slightly lower than something like Bohemian Rhapsody at 1.1 million, Aquaman at 1.2 million, and Captain Marvel at 970,000. Either way, those are movies that made much more at the box office than Alita, and being in that range would really give us a step up at getting enough revenue to get that sequel filmed. I'd anticipate getting actual numbers next week, so stay tuned for that. And for now, y'all have a great day, God bless, and we'll talk to you soon. Doc out.